To watch these important lessons, subscribe to DP Education's YouTube channel right now. Click on the bell icon to stay updated on the latest lessons. Sri Lanka's largest free online school, DP Education.
So my dear children, in the earlier chapter, we discussed about the tsunami waves. And from that, we have discussed about earthquakes, tsunami waves, and about cyclones, my dear children. So this is the fourth type of natural disaster that we can observe within this lesson part. So the fourth type of natural disaster is wildfires, my dear children. Wildfires. Right. So here it is given, wildfires have occurred out in jungles from the distant past. When a forest is dry, wildfires may erupt due to natural reasons such as lightning or setting fire deliberately or by mistake. So, my dear children, wildfires are mainly going to occur if the environment is dry and if there are certain substances which can catch up with fire quite easily. So if there are substances which can catch up fire with easily during the dry season, my dear children, when the temperature is going to rise, right, wildfires can occur. So wildfires are going to occur within the environment because of those reasons. If a certain lightning condition will come, then wildfires may start. Sometimes, my dear children, people will also would result wildfires, right, deliberately or else by a mistake, right. So this is also can be considered as a natural disaster if these things are going to happen because of the natural reasons. But however, if deliberately some person is going to start a fire, right, within a forest or within a certain area, then we won't be able to consider that thing as a natural disaster. But however, usually these wildfires are getting started because of as a natural reason or as a natural disaster, my dear children, right? Okay then. So as you can see here within the figure, you can clearly observe how a wildfire is going to spread around a certain forest, right? So the main reason for the occurrence is, once again I'll let you know, because of having dry materials, right, which can coat up with fire quite easily, right? Okay then. So there are three factors that should be met for a fire to break out. So there are three factors, my dear children. There are three factors which should be there in order to break out a fire, right? So these three factors: available of a combustible substance. Like I said, there should be dry substances which can combust quite fast. Okay, so available of a combustible substance. Then availability of a supporter of combustion or oxygen. Then second one would be available of supporter of combustion, or else in simple, oxygen gas. Oxygen gas is a supporter of combustion. Then heating the combustible substance to the ignition temperature. Heating the combustible substance to the ignition temperature. That would be the next one, right? So ignition temperature means the temperature at which a certain substance is going to catch up with fire, my dear children. So we have to heat that particular substance to the ignition temperature in order to start a fire, right? So these are the three main key things that should met when starting a fire breakout. So availability of a combustible substance, availability of a supporter of combustion or oxygen, and heating the combustible substance up to the ignition temperature, right? Okay then. Then, my dear children, several factors are affecting the spread of wildfires. So there are several factors that would spread the wildfires, my dear children. Okay, because of these factors, the wildfires will spread quite fast. So what are the factors? Mainly, now let's think and we'll get some idea about these factors first. Now, occurrence now, or else having a dry climate is a main reason for the occurrence of wildfires, and it would also lead to spread of wildfires as well. Okay, then second one would be having dry winds, my dear children. So if a certain area is having dry winds, then that would also create, right, that would also spread these wildfires, right? So like that way, there can be several reasons. These things you can just think and write down, my dear children. You can just think, right? These are like general knowledge, okay? But however, we'll focus what are the things that would spread up a wildfire, okay? So existence of dry plant leaves or tree stems as the combustible material. So like I said, if within a certain environment there are certain combustible substances, dry substances, if there are plenty of dry substances, then my dear children, such a place has a high possibility in catching up with wildfire and spreading wildfires. Okay, so the first and foremost thing is having dry plant leaves and stems, which can be available as combustible substances in the environment. Okay, then next one given, prevalence of a high temperature. So the second one, right, if a certain environment is having a very high temperature, then the dryness of the environment is going to be very high. Because of the dryness in the environment, my dear children, fire would spread quite fast. Okay, a fire would spread quite fast, right? So because of having dry environment, right, because of having dry environmental factors, or because of having dry temperature, right, these wildfires may spread quite fast. Then next one given, low humidity, water vapor content in air. So that is also regarding the dry climate, right? So if within an environment, if there is very less amount of water vapor, right, if within a certain environment, if there is a very less amount of water vapor, or if there is very less amount of water vapor in the atmosphere, then my dear children, it would definitely spread the, right, it would definitely spread the wildfires. Okay, it is going to be a reason for the spread of wildfires, right? Then the next one given, profuse supply of oxygen to the fire due to blowing wind. So the other thing, because of having dry winds, right, high amount of oxygen is plenty getting available for the material which is getting burned within a wildfire. So if a certain area receives plenty of dry wind, right, then my dear children, good amount of oxygen gas is being supplied to the fire, which means the fire will spread even more, right? So prolong, or else having high amount of dry winds blowing across a certain dry area will also trigger a wildfire, and it will also be a reason for the spread of wildfires, right? Then next one, slopy land that helps upward spread of the fire. Then next one would be having a slopy land. So if the land is slopy, my dear children, then for upward or for the downward, quite easily the fire can spread because of the direction of the blowing wind, right? These these fire sparks can travel without any trouble, or with ease these fire sparks can travel. So if those areas are also having dry materials, then these sparks can create a certain fire within that certain area. So that means, my dear children, if the land is somewhat slopy, then that would also trigger, right, that would also would be a reason for the spread of wildfires. Okay, it would be a main reason for the spread of wildfires. So these are the reasons for the spread of wildfires, my dear children, right? So because of these reasons, because of these several reasons, wildfires would start and they will spread within a certain environment, especially within a dry environment. Okay, right then. So here it is given, a wildfire is a terrifying scene. In a wildfire, a very tall column of fire moves forward very fast. The smoke produced in this rises to a height of thousands of meters in the atmosphere. So, my dear children, this wildfire thing is very terrifying. The flame which is getting created by the wildfire, okay, it's going to spread in a very large area. And other than that, the smoke created because of the wildfire is going to rise up 1000 meters. So means that the environment is heavily getting affected. Smoke contains different kinds of toxic gases, right? Because of the burning of substances contained within the plant and animal materials, several toxic gases may emit to the environment. And also the other fact is that, my dear children, large amount of carbon dioxide gas and unburned carbon particles, carbon monoxide, like that way different kinds of substances, different kinds of harmful gases and substances will emit to the environment. Carbon dioxide is not that much harmful for the environment. You know that carbon dioxide is even being absorbed by plants to do the photosynthesis. But however, if large extent of carbon dioxide is getting released to the environment, then it's going to be deadly. Because carbon dioxide is a main type of a gas which is helpful for the global warming, right? And there are other side effects of emitting large amount of carbon dioxide as well, my dear children. So because of that, different kinds of serve effects may occur within a certain environment after a wildfire. Okay, right then. So a wildfire is a terrifying scene. So in a wildfire, very tall column of fire moves forward very fast. Then the other thing is that the smoke produced in this case, my dear children, it is going to rise like 1000 meters in the atmosphere, emitting large amount of carbon dioxide and other types of different toxic gases to the environment. Okay. So the next one given, more and more fires also would break out because fire flames are carried through air to distant places from the fire. And now the next thing is, my dear children, because of the wind blow, right? Because of the wind flow, dry winds, the fire which is created within a certain place will be carried out to different places, other different places, right? So the wind which is getting created, or wind which is at a certain place where the wildfires have been started, will also going to spread these wildfires to different other places. So the wind is going to be a good factor, or else a favorable factor for the spread of wildfires, right? Then plants and animals have been damaged due to wildfires. Organisms are adversely affected even by the smoke produced by wildfires. So can you remember, my dear children, during the recent years, during the recent past, a wildfire was triggered in Australia, killing thousands of animals, kangaroos and koala bears, right? So that wildfire took like days to, put off, right? And the government, Australian government, like they did several things to put off this fire. But however, right, the fire spreaded like weeks. So the damage caused because of that was immense, right? Several, like if you take the area which the fire spreaded, it was in acres, right? It was in acres, thousands of acres. So it's a very vast area. So all the animals, right, all the animals who were living within that area, suffered because of the wildfire. Not even for the animals, my dear children, but for the people who is living in that places. They also suffered because of the wildfires. For Sri Lanka, this wildfire thing is not that much common, but however, sometimes we have heard about several news, right, regarding wildfires in certain areas. So wildfires can also happen in Sri Lanka, right, as our country is a tropical country. But however, my dear children, like if you take the wildfires, these fires are not getting spreaded up to that much extent in Sri Lanka. Okay. And the other thing is that in Sri Lanka, when you take the incident wildfires, there are like few incidents regarding wildfires, and also the devastating conditions are somewhat less smaller than, right, very smaller than the previous incidents. Okay, right. So next point given in here, it has been reported that respiratory difficulties and even deaths have occurred in certain instances. So this is going to affect for the people mainly by the respiratory system, because you know that the smoke which is going to emit, going to spread in here in a vast area, no. So when people is going to respire these toxic substances with toxic gases, the respiratory system is getting disabled, or respiratory system is getting affected. And because of the respiratory system failures, right, people will not have the ability to get enough oxygen. So in that case, my dear children, the people will have different kinds of respiratory diseases, and also sometimes people will also get injured, seriously injured, and sometimes may die also, right? Then in Sri Lanka, approximately 4,000 acres of land has been destroyed in 2016 owing to wildfires. Now in Sri Lanka, here it is a report given in the year 2016, about 4,000 acres of land has been destroyed. Okay, about 4,000, right? However, they are not mentioning about several deaths or any other things or property destructions, because like I said, these incidents, my dear children, I mean the wildfires, are not much disastrous than, right, the previous ones. Okay, not that much heavy they are not showing that much of a heavy disastrous thing like the disastrous things like the previous ones. Okay, however, right, however, my dear children, the forest cover and animals are getting highly affected because of the wildfires, right? Forest covers and animals who are living within those certain areas getting highly affected because of the wildfires, right? Okay then, right, so that's all about with the wildfires then. So we have discussed 4 different cases of natural disasters within this lesson part, my dear children, right? Especially we discussed about cyclones, which is a more often natural disaster that affects the Sri Lankan people and Sri Lanka, right? Then we discussed about tsunami waves. Tsunami waves also have a high tendency to occur within the coastal region of Sri Lanka, right? Even in 2004, right, we come across with such experience of tsunami, right? So next we discussed about earthquakes. So we have discussed that earthquakes are not going to happen more often within Sri Lanka, but like tremors can occur, right? Still up to now we haven't got any experience, I mean like devastating experience about earthquakes. Okay, then we studied about the wildfires, my dear children. So these are the four main natural disasters that we have studied within this lesson part. Now the given here a special kind of a topic. By just reading out the topic, you can get a certain idea, right, about now what kind of a thing is going to occur over here. So the topic, let's see, the relationship between increase in global warming and natural disasters. So now we are going to find out a certain relationship between the increase of global warming, that means increasement of average temperature in our planet Earth, right? Global warming, increase of average temperature in our planet Earth with the natural disasters. How it is going to affect, how the increasement of temperature, right, is going to affect for the natural disasters. I mean, like, how it is going to create natural disasters. What is the relationship that we can observe within the natural disasters and with the increasement of global temperature? You know that, my dear children, the increasement of global temperature or else global warming mainly getting caused because of the actions of human, like the release of greenhouse gases. So I think when we are discussing about the lesson artificial environment and the green concept, we discussed several things regarding the greenhouse effect, and we discussed how the greenhouse effect is going to create and how the global warming is going to happen because of the greenhouse effect, right? And my dear children, we discussed how, what are the kinds of, right, what are the kinds of gases and substances that would help to increase the global warming. That means these things are also referred to as the greenhouse gases, right? So we have discussed these things in detail when we are discussing about the 14th lesson. So I hope that you will follow up with those things which we have learned within the 14th lesson before coming to this part. Okay, so that knowledge is quite important when studying about these parts. Okay, right then. So once again, my dear children, human activities are the main reasons for the increasement of global temperature. Human activities are the main reason for the global warming. So global warming means, my dear children, let me give you a brief. Because of emission of too much of greenhouse gases are the gases that can absorb solar radiation, and while absorbing the solar radiation, greenhouse gases has the ability to reflect these things, re-radiate these things towards the planet Earth once again. Okay, so therefore the surface temperature of the planet Earth will get increase. This process is referred to as the greenhouse effect. Gases that can absorb, right? Gases that can absorb the solar radiation and which can re-radiate back to the planet Earth. Okay, these things are referred to as greenhouse gases. Okay, so my dear children, greenhouse effect is the main reason for the increasement of global temperature, and the greenhouse effect is resulted because of the emission of greenhouse gases like carbon dioxide. Okay, right. Now this is a brief for the lesson part which I'm about to discuss right now. So let's head on to see the lesson part, and when we are discussing about the lesson part, you will get furthermore information regarding the relationship between global warming and the natural disasters. Okay, right. So during the past 100 years, the average temperature of the world has been increased. This condition is known as global warming. So like I said, my dear children, when you take past years, so from one particular year to another, right, the average temperature of the planet Earth is keep getting increased. Okay, this is what do you mean by the global warming then. The graph in the figure shows how the average temperature changed from 1860 to 2000 in the world. So there is a graph, and this graph is going to show how the average temperature of the planet Earth has got increased in the recent years. I mean from 1860 to 2000. See how the graph is going to show that? Actually, within the recent years, there was a huge spike, right? After 1980s, right? After 1960s and 1970s, there is a huge spike. There's a huge spike in the graph. Huge means, I mean, like the temperature, the increasement of global temperature is very high after like 1960s and 1970s. And when it is coming to 2000, it is at the very peak, my dear children, right? So average global temperature has rise up from 13.5 to 14.6, right, in Celsius degrees. So by looking at the graph, you can clearly observe that within the recent years, my dear children, the temperature has gradually increased. Actually, after like 1950, it has rapidly increased. Okay, not gradually, but rapidly has got increased. Okay, so here you can observe, right, what has happened to the global temperature within the recent years. Okay, now let's see what are the other contents then. So from the above graph, it is clear that the average temperature of the world has increased during this period. Scientists indicate that a main reason for this increase in temperature is the greenhouse effect. So like I said, my dear children, now there was a table given in the previous slide. From that table, we can clearly observe that the global temperature has rose up dramatically within the recent years. So the main reason for the increasement of this, right, global temperature is the greenhouse effect. Greenhouse effect is the main reason for the increasement of global temperature, right? So here it is given, generally during daytime, the earth gets heated up by sun rays. During night, heat is lost to space. So the earth gets cooled. But since the carbon dioxide gas and water vapor in the atmosphere absorb and retain a part of heat released from the earth, they help to keep the earth warm. This is called greenhouse effect. This effect creates favorable environment for the living beings on the earth. Now, my dear children, now sun is the main source of heat energy in our planet Earth. Sun is the one which is providing the heat energy, right, for the planet Earth mainly. So when solar rays come and hit the surface of the planet Earth, right, some amount of radiation, heat radiation is being absorbed and some is being reflected back. So during the night time, what will happen? Earth is getting cooled down as the heat rays which has been absorbed is being re-radiated back to the space. But the thing is that greenhouse gases like water vapor and carbon dioxide can absorb these radiated waves, re-radiating heat waves. And my dear children, they, while absorbing these heat radiation, right, when absorbing these heat radiation, the temperature or the planet Earth will not get cooled and it will maintain a certain amount of temperature within the environment. This effect is this effect is so much valuable for us. Why is that? Because it's going to create a certain temperature, a certain favorable temperature for the survival of the beings in our planet Earth. Now let's imagine like this. If there are no any greenhouse gases, then what will happen? Then during the daytime, my dear children, we will have enough solar radiation and we will have enough heat. But however, during the night time, the environment will get rapidly cooled down and sometimes even get frozen because of that. Okay, sometimes the materials and plants and all the other stuff will get frozen because large amount of heat energy is getting reduced or getting released from the environment, from the planet Earth. So in that case, during the night time, right, the environment will get freeze. So that it would create certain devastating conditions. The life on the earth will not be able to survive during the night time period if such a condition is going to prevail. So my dear children, it's very important. This greenhouse effect is very important for the planet Earth, right? Otherwise, during the night time, we won't be able to survive. Not we, but the other organisms. Okay, other organisms who is living within the planet Earth will not be able to survive, right? If there are no any greenhouse gases. Okay, so the greenhouse effect is very important. Then how it is going to be a troublemaking thing? It's mainly because of the human activities, my dear children. More and more these types of greenhouse gases are getting emitted to the environment. Let's take carbon dioxide gas. Now, usually you know that carbon dioxide gas is getting expelled to the environment from the respiration of organisms. Other than that, by the combustion of fossil fuel, my dear children, large amount of carbon dioxide gas is getting released to the environment. Okay, the carbon dioxide gas which is getting emitted to the environment is going to be very huge by the factories, by vehicles, by certain machines and other stuff also. Carbon dioxide gas is getting released to the environment mainly because of the human activities. So the concentration of carbon dioxide gas in the atmosphere is keep getting increased day by day. So that would trigger large amount of greenhouse effect will increase day by day. When increasing the greenhouse effect, my dear children, planet Earth is going to be like a hot plate or like an oven, electric oven, right? I'm going to tell you like that. It's like a microwave now, because in a microwave, the heat radiation which is created within the oven is not going to escape, and because of that, the temperature is keep getting increased within the oven. Okay, so which means, my dear children, right, the oven, inside the oven is getting heated up to a certain extent, right? So it means that we can bake even certain substances. It's because the heat radiation created within the instrument is not getting escaped to the outer environment. Within itself, it is getting, trapped. So therefore, right, the temperature is very high. The same procedure can be observed within the planet Earth as well. Solar rays which is coming from the sun, right, will hit the planet Earth and will not escape from the Earth. It's keep getting retained within the surface of the Earth, increasing the global temperature day by day. So it's very important to release out some amount of this heat energy. If the entire heat energy is getting retained within the planet Earth, then, my dear children, will be get baked in simple, right? Okay, then. So this effect create favorable environment for the living beings on the earth. So it is creating a favorable environment, but however, if it is going to happen in a larger extent, then it's going to be devastating. Okay, right. So however, because of the increase in concentration of the greenhouse gases such as carbon dioxide, methane, dinitrogen oxide, sulfur dioxide. So these are the examples given here. These gases are the greenhouse gases, my dear children. These are the ones which can absorb solar radiation and which can re-radiate these things back to the planet Earth. Okay, what are those examples? Carbon dioxide, methane, dinitrogen oxide, sulfur dioxide, and my dear children, even ozone, right? Ozone and water vapor, all of these things belongs to greenhouse gases, right? So the temperature of the earth is gradually increasing. So when the concentration of these greenhouse gases are going to increase in the planet earth, increase in the atmosphere of the planet earth, then gradually the temperature of the earth is getting increased. In addition to the gases above mentioned, ozone and chlorofluorocarbon also contribute to the greenhouse effect. So like I said, ozone is also contributing. Other than that, my dear children, CFC gas, chlorofluorocarbon, it is used as a coolant, right? It is used as a coolant, usually in earlier times for perfume, in making perfumes, and also in refrigerators and in air conditioners. We have used chlorofluorocarbon. But however, in nowadays, my dear children, scientists have identified that the CFC gas is going to create greenhouse effect in larger extent, and also it is going to harm the ozone layer. So therefore, usage of CFC has been minimized to very extent, right? So nowadays, actually, the refrigerators and the air conditioners that we use, actually those things are CFC free. Even that label is being printed on your refrigerator or your air conditioners at your home. If you want, you can check those things, right? CFC free, like that sticker or else a certain thing has been printed on the refrigerators or air conditioners, but in sometimes, okay, that is showing in order to show that these instruments are free of CFC, chlorofluorocarbon. So usage of chlorofluorocarbon has been minimized up to certain extent within our society, because scientists have identified that it is going to contribute for the global warming, and also it's going to harm the ozone layer, right? But however, my dear children, there can be instances where this CFC gas is being used, right? So most of the times these are being used, right, within the perfumes and all the other refrigeration materials, right? If these things are not in a if these things are not in a not produced in a standard manner, right, or well recognized company, then sometimes, my dear children, CFC gas may include within these products. Okay, always remember, it's very important to, right, use materials or use things, instruments which are CFC free. Okay, then this is how the greenhouse effect is going to occur, my dear children. So like I said, the solar rays which is coming from the sun towards the planet earth will hit on the surface and will escape back. But however, when increasing the greenhouse gases, it will re-radiate back to the planet earth. So this re-radiation will help to maintain a favorable temperature. But however, if it is going to happen, I mean, like if the concentration of these greenhouse gases are going to increase, then this re-radiation would happen quite often, and because of that, the temperature of the planet earth will get increased, which will not be favorable for the people and the animals living in the planet earth, creating a global warming condition, right? Okay, then the ways by which greenhouse gases added to the environment. Now we're going to discuss how or what are the ways which these greenhouse gases can emit to the environment. Let's see. Release of carbon dioxide by volcanic eruptions, thermal power plants, and combustion of fuels in vehicles. So release of carbon dioxide by volcanic eruptions. Volcanic eruptions is a, that's a natural thing, no? So we won't be able to stop those kinds of incidents, as those things are natural disasters. But however, my dear children, if you take thermal power plants, within a thermal power plant, we burn a certain substance. It can be coal, a fuel, or any kind of other substance, right? So we burn these substances to generate heat energy. So upon burning a certain fuel, you know that fuels are going to burn out and release carbon dioxide gas. So within thermal power plants, my dear children, right, the main byproduct which is getting created is carbon dioxide. So all of that carbon dioxide is being expelled to the environment, right? So carbon dioxide concentration will definitely get increased by thermal power plants. Then combustion of fuels in vehicles, like I said when I was starting this lesson part, there are large amount of vehicles in our planet, in our earth, right? There are large amount of vehicles. When you take Sri Lanka, even within Sri Lanka also, there are large number of vehicles running here and there. All of these vehicles, most of these vehicles, my dear children, right, not all, but most of these vehicles, right, they use fossil fuel, petrol, diesel. So when using fossil fuel, upon burning of these fossil fuel, my dear children, you know that main gas which is going to emit is carbon dioxide. So when we are using vehicles in larger extent, right, carbon dioxide gas will emit to the environment, right? Then release of methane from heaps of garbage, marshes, etc. So methane is created mainly because of decomposition of plant and animal materials, my dear children. Upon the decomposition of plant and animal materials, right, what will happen? This methane gas is getting created. Actually, methane is getting created because of the action of microorganisms on organic matter. So we are organic matter, right, because we are mainly composed of carbon. So when organic matter are getting decomposed with the action of microorganisms, methane gas is getting emitted to the environment, right? So I think when we are discussing about the first lesson, can you remember, methane is a gas which is plenty available within the biogas units. So even when you take biogas, right, the main constituent in biogas is methane, right? It's a combustible gas, right? However, methane, when it is being expelled in greater amounts to the atmosphere, it behaves as a greenhouse gas, my dear children. So it can absorb solar radiation, right, and can re-radiate these radiation towards the planet Earth. So methane will definitely increase the global warming. Okay, so methane can be emitted because of several reasons. If we are disposing garbage, household garbage, right, in improper manner, then this garbage can decompose, and because of decomposing garbage, then to the environment, my dear children, methane gas can emit. Then other than that, if there are marshy lands, so in the marshy lands, my dear children, plants and other kinds of algae will grow excessively, and because of that, because of the competition, they will die, and upon dying, microorganisms will come and act on these substances, and large amount of methane gas will emit to the environment. Okay, so methane is also a type of a greenhouse gas, my dear children. It will also create greenhouse effect, right? Then the next one, release of CFC from refrigerators, air conditioners, etc. So like I said, I told you, CFC, chlorofluorocarbon, is mainly used as a, right, a coolant, a cooling material. So sometimes, my dear children, now sometimes means, like I said, most of the times in our day-to-day life right now, right, within our modern world, the CFC gas has been prohibited to use within these instruments like refrigerators and AC, air conditioners. So most of the times we are using other different kinds of gases, right? But however, if there are certain things or certain instruments which have not been met with the certain standards, they might have these CFC gases. So it's very important to take, when you are buying certain refrigerator or else a air conditioner, it's very important to buy a product which has been created according to a certain standard, right, and from a good reputed buyer, right? So it's very important to do that, because otherwise, my dear children, you will be also contributing for the increasement of global warming, right? So because of the emission of CFC gases in refrigerators and air conditioners also, right, this global warming, right, will get increased. So these are the ways which greenhouse gases are added to the environment, right? These are the ways which greenhouse gases getting added to the environment then, right? So the graph in the figure indicate the change in number of incidents of cyclones in the world from 1850 to 2015. So from 1850 to 2015, how does the cyclones have been occurred in the planet Earth is mentioned within this graph. As you can see, within the 1850s time, the number of cyclones that has occurred is not going to show, like, it is not that much in higher number. But however, when you are moving from this particular side to that side, you can clearly observe that there is a growth, right? There is a growth. If I'm going to draw a line, it's like this, right? See? So I have pinpoint the lines, right? So there is a, see? Let's let's take these lines, mid lines, not the top ones, not the very lower ones, but like mid lines, central lines, not very high one, not very lower ones. If you draw a line connecting the midpoints, connecting the average count of cyclones like this, you can clearly observe that there is a increase in, right? There is a clear increase in cyclones starting from 1850 to 2015, right? So the above graph brings to light the fact that the number of the events of cyclones in the world has gradually increased. Of course, it has gradually increased, right? So you can clearly observe that from 1850 to 2015, the incidence of cyclones has got dramatically increased, right, from year to year. Figure shows a histogram which depicts the number of natural disasters changed during the period 1980 to 2010. And now another graph given in here, it shows a histogram. In simple, let's take as a bar graph. Okay, it shows a bar graph which is going to depict the number of natural disastrous conditions which has occurred within the time period 1980 to 2010. So like in the previous way, we'll draw out a certain line. Here I'm going to use only the average lines, my dear children, okay, not the highest ones, not the lowest ones. See, once again, when you observe the line, you can clearly observe the height of the line has got increased. It means, right, the natural disasters which has occurred within this time period has increased gradually, okay? It has got increased gradually starting from 1980 to 2010. So the figure shows a histogram which depicts how the number of natural disasters changed during the time period of 1980 to 2010. Okay, so number of loss events. Then here the year. Geophysical events, earthquakes, tsunami and volcanic activities being represented by these, red color ones. Then meteorological events like cyclones are being represented by the green color ones. Then hydrological events like floods and earth slips being represented by the blue color lines. Then climatological events like extreme temperatures and droughts and wildfires being represented by the final, this light yellow color, orange color ones. So the collection is being represented on each of the year, right? the collection or the total is being represented like this. So you can clearly observe, starting from 1982 towards 2010, there is a gradual increase in the natural disasters, right? So the chart indicates that the number of natural disasters has gradually increased during this period. From the above information, it is clear that there is a relationship between increase in global warming and the increase in number of natural disasters. So my dear children, by just looking at this, you can clearly get an idea that there is a certain increasement in natural disasters with the increasement of global warming, or with the increasement of temperature in our planet Earth, right? Within the recent years, our natural temperature, our global temperature is keep getting increased. We know that. So up to from 1980 to 2010, there is a vast increase of natural disasters. And you know that from year to year, our global temperature also getting increased, right? So it's very clear to us that when increase in the global temperature, the natural disasters which is going to happen is also going to increase. This is mainly going to happen because of the greenhouse effect, right? Because of the greenhouse effect. Whole climatic patterns of the planet Earth is getting changed because of increase in the global temperature, my dear children, right? When changing the climatic patterns, right? Uneven distribution of heat energy and uneven distribution of wind because of that, right? Will create or will trigger out several kinds of cyclones, creating low pressure conditions. And sometimes in some areas, my dear children, the temperature will drop down, creating icy conditions. And these icy conditions, I mean like snow kind of conditions, is going to be very rough, right? And the people will not be able to survive in some times. And my dear children, because of uneven distribution of heat energy, some areas will suffer from extreme heat, creating droughts and wildfires. Okay, so these climatic shifts and climatic changes are the main reasons, right, which is going to result because of the greenhouse effect. Greenhouse effect is triggering the increasement of global warming, right? Okay, then, so several kinds of natural disasters will trigger because of the increasement of global warming, my dear children. Okay, right then. So for extra knowledge, certain thing is given here. During the period from 2000 to 2009, natural disasters have occurred 3 times more than the number of those occurred from 1980 to 1989. So from 1980 to 1989, right, 10 years of time. So within these 10 years of time, my dear children, let's imagine that like 30 incidents of natural disasters has occurred. Then 30, okay, here from 1980 to 1989, 30. Then here it is mentioning that during the period from 2000 to 2009, natural disasters have occurred 3 times more than, which means if here 30, then here 90, 3 times more than, right? 3 times more than. It's about 3 times then. About 3 times, right? These things has occurred. About 3 times. Nearly 3 times more than, we can nearly take as 3 times, right? So within this time period, 1980 to 1989, within that 10 years, right? If 30 incidents were happened, then here it's around what? 90 incidents. About 3 times, my dear children. Actually, it is more than 3 times, but nearly we can take as 3 times now. Then, so it's going to be very disastrous when you go into future, right? Then, globally, the number of natural disasters reported in 1970 was 78, whereas the number of those reported in 2004 was 348. See the difference, my dear children. In 1970, it was around 78. All the natural disasters, right? All the natural disasters that happened within the planet Earth in 1970 was just 78 incidents. But however, when it is coming to 2004, my dear children, it was around 348. 348. Check the numbers. Then you will get a certain idea that how much, right, how much it has been increased when it is coming up to, right, like here, from here to here, like it's no like 34 years, no. So with that 34 years, see how much is the change. It has been dramatically changed, my dear children. It has been dramatically increased up to 340. For 378 to 348 means, 78 to 348 means very, I mean, like it's very huge value, right? So therefore, it's very important to not to release large amount of greenhouse gases. Actually, several governments are now implement certain things, and certain legislations are being followed by certain governments in order to minimize the emission of greenhouse gases, right? Now certain acts even being followed out by government in order to certain governments in order to minimize the emission of greenhouse gases, my dear children. So this is that much important, right? This is that much important because in the recent future, we won't be able to survive within planet Earth if we are not going to reduce the emission of greenhouse gases. Okay, so let's see the third point then. During the period from 1980 to 2009, the number of natural disasters related to weather has increased by 80%. So it has been increased by 80% from 1980 to 2009, right? Number of natural disasters related to weather condition has been increased by 80%. So once again, like I said in the previous, my dear children, this global warming is mainly going to affect for the weather conditions, for the climatic condition in the planet Earth, right? Mainly it is going to distribute heat energy unevenly throughout the planet Earth, and because of that, definitely, my dear children, weather related natural disasters will definitely going to increase in our planet Earth. In the future, it's going to increase even more if we are not going to hold down this global warming process. Okay, so by these facts, you can clearly observe there is a clear relationship between the increasement of global warming and between the natural disasters, my dear children. When the global warming, or when the average temperature of the planet Earth is going to increase because of the uneven distribution of heat energy and so on, right, definitely natural disasters will also get increased, especially natural disasters which are related to weather conditions like cyclones, droughts, wildfires and so on, right? Okay then, so my dear children, it is given that in here what we can do to prevent the increase in global warming. So now we have studied that global warming will increase the probability of getting natural disasters. No, so what are the things that we can follow to stop it, to mitigate it? Let's see. Forestation and conservation of forest. So forestation, it's very simple. Conservation of forest and forestation is really important, because you know that if there are plenty of trees, then trees can absorb carbon dioxide, and because of the reduction of carbon dioxide, the global warming will decrease. Then usage of public transport instead of private transport. So instead of cars, right, and private vehicles, if we can use public vehicles, public transport, then we can minimize the emission of carbon dioxide gas, because burning of fossil fuel is getting limited over here. Next one, consumption of more plant food and obtaining them from whereas close to the residence. So here we are discussing about minimizing the food mile, right? So if we can minimize the food mile, can you remember we discussed about the food mile when we are discussing the previous lessons, my dear children? So over there we discussed that minimization of food mile is important for the sustainable development. It will help the sustainable development. So food mile means the distance by which a food item is going to travel from producer to consumer. So when decreasing this food mile, definitely the sustainable development is high. Also, the emission of greenhouse gases is also going to reduce, right? Next one, economizing electricity using energy saving electrical appliances. So you know that most of the energy is getting produced because of the thermal power plants. Even in Sri Lanka also, thermal power plants are the ones which is going to produce more amount of electricity, more percentage of electricity, not the hydropower plants. Okay, so therefore, my dear children, it's important to conserve energy. It's important to save energy as much as possible, especially electricity. So therefore, we have to use electricity economically. By that way, we can minimize the usage, and minimizing the usage means, my dear children, right? These power plants will not need to provide that much of, or will not need to generate that much of electricity. Okay, so minimizing the usage of electricity will also lower the emission of greenhouse gases. Next one, reducing the amount of materials consumed daily. So daily consuming materials, if we can minimize it, then also we can decrease the emission of greenhouse gases. Next one, living a simple lifestyle without using more materials. So living a simple lifestyle, right, without using any more materials. The next one given, raising the awareness of the others about the above facts. So it's very important to raise the awareness of the others, right? If you know something, right, if you know something about different things, then it is going to be, right, very effective if we can enlighten the others with those facts. Okay, so these are the things that we can do in order to prevent the increase in global warming, my dear children. So all of these things will help to minimize the emission of greenhouse gases. By that way, up to a certain extent, we can minimize the effect of global warming. Okay, so my dear children, we have studied now each and every part related to the lesson natural disasters, right? So we have concluded the lesson. Then we have studied about the earthquakes, cyclones, wildfires, and about tsunami waves. Then finally, my dear children, we discussed how natural disasters are going to relate with the global warming. Now it's time to check the summary about the things that we have learned. So here it is given. The damage caused by natural disasters can be minimized by keeping vigilance over one's environment, use of standard safety methods, and maintaining connection with media of communication. So when there is a natural disaster is going to happen, my dear children, most probably these things are being announced in mass media for sure. So it's very important to listen about these communication, listen about these mass media and communications. And my dear children, sometimes, right, it's very important to have a good knowledge about these disasters in order to mitigate the bad effects given out by these things. Okay, so we should have good communication with the mass media and also with the government, right, in order to minimize the bad effects caused by the natural disasters. Okay, then because of the development of depressions in the atmosphere, cyclones and storms are created. So because of the development of depressions in the atmosphere, cyclones and storms are getting created. So depression means it is a low pressure kind of a condition. So because of low pressure kind of conditions, a depression is going to create, and depressions are the ones resulting cyclones and storms. Next one, lot of damages to property and loss of lives have been brought about by cyclones from time to time in Sri Lanka. If you take Sri Lanka, my dear children, from time to time in Sri Lanka, because of cyclones, different kinds of severe disastrous conditions have occurred. So these conditions may even has happened to properties and as well as to the people as well, right? So cyclones is a main natural disaster which is going to hit Sri Lanka more often, right? Then earthquakes would result when the crustal plate of the earth move relative to one another. So when crustal plates, tectonic plates, move related to one another, then my dear children, there's a chance of creating an earthquake, because in here the two plates are getting contact each other, right? Two borders which are getting contacted each other, right? Getting moved to a certain location, to a certain different location. So in that case, earthquakes will occur, right? Tsunami is mainly caused by lifting of oceanic water, right? Tsunami is mainly caused by lifting of oceanic water due to the earthquakes in the seabed. So mainly these tsunami waves are getting created because of the earthquakes which is going to happen within the oceanic bed, and because of that, you know that oceanic water flow is going to, right, oceanic water is going to increase. Water flow means the surface. So when the water flow is going to increase, right, on the sea, my dear children, the sea water level is also going to rise up, creating tsunami wave, right? Earthquakes and tsunami mainly occur in the regions associating the borders of the Earth's tectonic plates. So the next one, most of the times, my dear children, right, like 99% of these earthquakes and tsunami waves are getting triggered within the regions, within the borders of tectonic plates, right? Within the borders of the tectonic plates, we can observe more number of tsunami incidents and earthquakes, right? So there's a certain region called the Ring of Fire in the Pacific region, my dear children. Within that region, more number of earthquakes and tsunami can be observed. Okay. Next one. In other countries, wildfires break out due to natural causes. In Sri Lanka, the wildfires are occurred mostly the result of human activities. So sometimes in other countries, like in Australia, when I was explaining about the wildfires, I told you that, right? In other countries, usually, my dear children, wildfires are getting occurred because of natural activities. But however, in Sri Lanka, like I said, my dear children, right, most of the times, natural disasters like wildfires are getting occurred mainly because of human activities. Deliberately, a person is going to fire or else start a fire, or else sometimes by mistakes also, right? Next one. It is considered that the number of natural disasters increased due to increase in global warming. So the next thing is, my dear children, because of the increasement of global warming, natural disasters have also been increased. So that was the final part regarding the lesson, natural disasters. Over there, we took several charts and we took several, graphs, and we discussed how the increasement of global warming has affected to increase the natural disasters. So finally, at the lesson part, we concluded that with the increasement of global warming, right, gradually what has happened, the tendency of occurring natural disasters has also got increased. This thing mainly going to happen because of the uneven distribution of heat energy, right? uneven distribution of the heat energy. And because of that, what will happen? The climatic changes will occur within certain areas, creating different kinds of natural disasters. So that was the final part in our lesson. So my dear children, we have discussed all the theoretical parts related to the lesson natural disasters, and finally we discussed about the summary. Okay, so from that, my dear children, I'm going to finish up this chapter, right? So we have discussed all the theoretical parts in the lesson. Now within our next chapter, we'll be discussing questions related to the natural disasters. So first of all, we'll be starting, right, the questions related to the textbook. Then after that, we'll be discussing several extra questions as well. So it's very important to, right, read out the lesson part before you are going for the question part, my dear children, right? Not only the theory, but also questions are very important, right? Questions are very important, my dear children, to cover up the theoretical parts, and as well as your thinking and logical thinking capacity, right? It will also increase your logical thinking capacity and also will give you a guide on how to use the theoretical parts which we have studied within each and every lesson. Okay, so I hope that you will stay with me till the end of the next chapter as well, to identify the questions and to answer the questions in our 18th lesson. Okay, so I'm going to finish up and wind up this chapter, my dear children. Then in our next chapter, we'll start the questions part and we'll summarize the theories once more by doing questions. Okay, so till then, it's time to say goodbye then.
To watch these important lessons, subscribe to DP Education's YouTube channel right now. Click on the bell icon to stay updated on the latest lessons. Sri Lanka's largest free online school, DP Education.